Good morning, everyone.
Good morning.
All right, today we are going to be focusing on the nutrition domain of H2F. And typically when we talk about nutrition or you see nutritional advice, it's one of the first things you get into, and we've done it here in our clinics, are the quantitative values, right? This is how much protein you should eat, how many carbs you should eat, fat you should eat, how many calories in a day. And all of that is relevant and useful information, but I want to take a different step or a different approach to it. And in this one, I want to talk more about the psychosocial model, right? We can get into the psychosocial as well, but the psychosocial model as far as how we engage in dialogue and how that modifies our habits and our relationship with regards to food, okay? So Sergeant Libby was actually saying this before the recording started, but he was saying that, relative difficulty in a joking sense with trying to communicate with individuals that are gluten-free, right? And you can insert anything into those brackets. You could put, it's hard talking to a vegetarian or a vegan or a person that follows a carnivore diet or what have you. Why do you think that is? So attributing a lifestyle to a value and then maybe even a belief, which are hard to shake, right? But
I think he hit the nail on the head. The other thing is it could be some sort of I don't want to say event based, but some sort of event that happened in your life that made you switch. So I'm 120 pounds. 6'1", 120 pounds, 130 pounds.
How are you alive?
And I meet this person and I start eating a certain way. Now I'm 165, 170, 6'1", or the exact opposite. Now I'm 350 pounds or 400 pounds, and I lose 200 pounds off of a certain diet. So now this event or this thing that happened in my life, right? This significant change that happened in my life has changed everything about how I think about how I eat.
Absolutely. And I think this jumps a lot into both nutrition and physical exercise. One of the things that makes it difficult are if you have a diagnosis for a disorder, a disease, and you go and you get a prescription from a medical doctor, you're usually not trying, unless you have some type of adverse effect from that particular prescription, you're usually not going and trying this prescription for like 6 weeks and then another prescription for 6 weeks, and someone's not saying like, hey, I have this other prescription that you can take and you should try this out, right? It's usually a regimented process from some type of pharmaceutical aid that has gone through myriad testing and different phases of testing and gotten approved before it was ever able to be even advertised and sold through insurance at that medical clinic for you to be able to use. But with exercise, you can have someone that just moves often enough to have lower body fat, and maybe they're even young enough that they have a six-pack. And then so they have a six-pack, therefore they can give advice on having a six-pack, whether they had to actually do work to get there or not. And that person that may have, better genetics and more access to sports due to their potential the finance of their family and where they were at located, as opposed to someone else that culturally couldn't do a lot of movement and maybe that wasn't introduced as far as a habit within their lifestyle and their family. And then the dietary practices of their family also counter to that, and they don't have good genetics. Right. Well, this individual that doesn't know what they're doing and is trying to get this other person advice, that's not necessarily going to be very effective.
Right.
But as soon as this person that wasn't doing anything, to your point, sir, does something, they're going to see an effect.
Right.
And we take that effect as proof of whatever that advice was is efficient, when it may not be the case, right? So it's very hard in the physical and the nutrition world for exercise science, wherein there's so many different paths that can get you to that end result. But just because a path can get you there, does that mean it's the most efficient thing for you, especially long term? Right. And there's where we get into a lot of fad diets, as we talked about earlier, keto, Atkins diet, anything that's trying to find a short-term quick effect, quick change to your body.
That lead to eating disorders. So everything is appearance. It's okay, I put the pressure on me. And like you say, the end result. So I am eating exclusive or just eating a certain portion for a very long time, extending that. I've seen soldiers in the military that are so skinny and so small that you can tell that they don't even want to eat because they're afraid of gaining some weight. So I think that eating disorders are also a portion of it.
Oh, yes.
It's a sign that once you
Absolutely right.
To piggyback, that's crazy. I was thinking, to piggyback off what you're saying, you said something that I felt like I'll get ready to write down, but I'm glad you said that, so I wouldn't forget it. With soldiers in the military, I see, and you mentioned this before, where, okay, I have a PT test in 2 weeks. I don't want to be taped. I'm 15 pounds over my tape weight. I don't want to be taped. So they go on and I've seen it. You see them drop 20 pounds. I've seen it.
Yep.
So they won't get taped. And then what happens is you can see the result in the actual test.
It could be deadly.
Because now it can be deadly. But now I go, okay, what's my minimum? I need to save all my strength for the run because I've dropped this dramatic amount of weight. It's like an MMA fighter. But what they don't realize, the MMA fighter weighs in at 150, 155. But when they show up to the fight the day after or whatever, they're probably 170 pounds, 160 pounds.
Exactly.
They put that weight back on. They eat and they go in, a lot of protein, a lot of water because they dehydrate themselves. And wrestlers, anybody who's ever wrestled before, same way. You weigh 145 and you wrestling 38 or whatever, or 35. At 35, you drop 10 pounds and then you eat right after the weigh-in, you're right back up to 140, 142, it's the same way. So I've seen that, and that's dangerous. I've been taped since the day I joined the Army. And it won't change.
It won't. And we typically get to the tape conversation when we talk about nutrition. Almost every single time we've ever talked about nutrition, even teaching MFT for 8 years, almost 9 years, it always got that. And it is an important piece.
I just read
they recently changed. And we'll hit on that. We'll hit on that particular piece. You want to add anything to that? No, so far. Okay, good. And welcome, Sergeant Pena, for joining us this morning. So what I like to try and take as a change of approach, or from a leadership perspective, is the fact that these situations that we have, when we see our soldiers having these conversations, they're taking these extreme measures. What we don't tend to do, let me change the direction. What we don't tend to do as leaders is look at that as indicative of a education problem within the ranks. We see that as an individual taking extremes, but because we don't gather the data of how often this happens, how many soldiers may be doing this, how often they communicate within themselves, within the offices, within the hallways, etc., with inefficient practices, we don't typically see the scope of the lack of education issue, the ignorance issue. And then therefore we may address that one individual, or we may take the time to just help those that we see are really, really far off that scale, no pun intended. But we don't typically address education. And you even see this with the Army's general approach to health and readiness most of the time, right? Throughout most of our careers, whenever we're doing something outside of just doing the PT test, normal body composition measurements and things of that nature, the only times we see these initiatives, for at least from my perspective, anecdotally, the only times we see these initiatives are for, let's take together all the people that have failed the test. Let's take together all the people that are failing body composition. Let's put them in one group. maybe put a 3-day, 5-day, 1-week, 2-week thing together, some type of quote unquote fit camp, and solve the issue. But we're not addressing, again, even with some educational pieces in there, that psychosocial piece. We're not addressing the leadership education piece, the systemic issues that are in place that cause the problems to begin with. We typically tackle the symptom rather than the cause. So what H2F is trying to do as a change is to tackle the leadership education. How do we take leaders all the way down to that squad and team level and educate them enough into understanding the signs and how to communicate about this? So when they're out and they're doing PMCS, they're doing driver's training, they're out doing in the field, doing any of their individual collective training tasks, how does this, the squad leader's level of education affect the conversations that they hear their soldiers say? Right. So if you're an E5 squad leader and you hear one of your E1 or E2, even, or when we can take this outside of the base soldier, because it happens in senior leadership as well. Right. You could be a full-time staffer and you could hear your SSA come around and say, you know, I need to drop 40 pounds, so I'm trying to run in a sauna suit early in the morning and sweat a lot. Right. And that should be an immediate warning sign for multiple things. One, it's dangerous. Dehydration is extremely dangerous. Any type of short-term change is dangerous. A soldier focusing on their weight is already dangerous and indicative of a lack of understanding, because weight is irrelevant outside of you being so far beyond the weight scale, right? If you're extremely obese, or if you have a competitive sport in which you have a weight class, your body weight is irrelevant. Instead, we need to be able to change their mindset to focus on what is that weight comprised of, right? If the soldier thinks that they can lose 20 pounds in a day, and you absolutely can, but
Yes, I lost 40 pounds.
well, okay, let's expound upon this piece, right? So
That, when she did that, that was a write-up.
yes,
Yeah, they did. She lost like 15 pounds.
so you can, right? So we have one individual, but this is the point I'm trying to get to. We have senior leaders in the room, nothing but senior leaders in this room. We have one person shaking their head saying, no, it's not possible. It took me a year to lose 14 pounds. Another saying, yeah, you can absolutely lose 20 pounds in a day, right? So just that disconnect on possibility is huge,
Right.
because that should, right, that should be something we can agree on. Like if I take a firearm, a working firearm, and I load it up and I shoot you in the head, we shouldn't really be able to argue about the possibility, depending on maybe the caliber of the firearm, right? About what's going to happen.
Right.
Okay, yes.
Right. So when it comes to weight on a scale, can you lose 20 pounds in a day?
Yes.
Yes. Not in a healthy way, but what would you be losing? Water. Right. So most of your body weight is in water. Is what you're going to say, Libby? Yes, 80% of every cell. And if you take the totality of your body, right, it's about the average person between 62 and 75%
Like the world.
water,
Like the earth.
just like the planet, right? So it's the majority water. So if I put you in that sauna suit and I put you with some heat lamps on a treadmill and I got your heart rate up, you can drop weight quick. You can drop maybe 40% of your entire body weight. Now, will you be very functional afterward? No. Right? Cognitively, you're gonna be terrible. And this is why I said it was deadly earlier. Once you feel thirsty, you're technically at about 1% dehydration. Right? And so thirst usually manages your dehydration. When you're at 2% dehydration, and dehydration is that if you took your body weight and you lost 2% of it, which isn't much, right? So if you were 100 pounds and you lost a pound, you're dehydrated, right? So it's very quick, very easy to do. So when you hit 2 to 4% dehydration, you can suffer a 70% performance loss, as well as cognitive loss for your ability to react to, not only react to contact like in the tactical sense, but your your ability to react to anything, right? You get that cognitive fog, everything starts to dampen, right? So you're not good tactically, you're not good technically with your skill, even if it's just sitting at a desk, operating a vehicle. So if we have soldiers that are definitely afraid of a number on a scale, when it's largely irrelevant, and they take means to lose a lot of water and they dehydrate themselves, the rest of that entire day, unless they rehydrate, enough to fix that, they're a complete loss performance-wise for you as a leader, right? So we need to understand these things. It's absolutely possible, but again, if the soldier thinks that weight is important or that matters, that's a red flag.
I watched, for example of this, I watched my old college roommate who played in the NFL, and it's like, I think it was 93 or 94 at that time, right? It was like this big, like, thing that came across the states. And of course, it's August and we're in 2-a-day practices. So we're at the morning practice. We're not even at the afternoon practice, and it's already blazing. And we had to weigh in before and after practice.
Yes.
We had to weigh in. So we weighed in. And if you drop a pound or two, even 3, because you got pads on, you got all stuff on. So he comes in and, he comes in and he lost like 14 pounds. And they immediately, when he stepped off the scale, it was like ER type stuff.
Yeah.
Like trauma type stuff. Like they took him off the scale, they took him right into our training room, and they hit him and they
IV.
IV like immediately.
Absolutely.
He didn't realize that he was looking, he was like, what's going on? But they was like, no, because what happens is there would be no way by the time we got to the next practice that he could have hydrated enough to be able to perform. So I think they made him sit out. So
Exactly.
It was the craziest thing I'd ever seen, other than somebody running in Kuwait in 100 degrees with their silk weights on, trying to lose weight.
Yeah. And I've seen it around here. I've seen it on this installation. We know it gets hot here. 6:30, the sun is up.
Yeah.
The moment that sun's up, it's hot. Right? So we need to be extra vigilant as leaders here with it. But to bring back to the original point, the conversations that are happening in our offices and our formations, right, out in the multiples, those belie the understanding of the soldiers. And typically, if you hear it more than once, it belies the understanding of the climate of all of the soldiers, right? That more than one believe it. And I've seen this teaching all across the country. The same general misunderstandings and ignorance with regards to nutrition are abundant, right? They're very prevalent, more so than the accurate information. And the more you understand chemistry, which is where a lot of nutrition falls under, right? Chemistry and biology, the more you understand those, the more you start to see how even the myths that sprinkle truth into these fads are just not practical. I would try and educate leaders to be weary of any type of conversation at all where a soldier is trying to enter a dietary habit that restricts a macronutrient, as an example. Any type of dietary habit where they say carbs are bad, or fat is bad, or protein is bad, just in general, that tells you so much about their misunderstanding. It's not just that they're inefficient with that piece of knowledge, but if they don't understand that core concept, all of these other sub-concepts that come down from that mean that they don't have a good understanding of diet. And they're going to be eating usually 2, 3, 4 times a day, every day for the rest of their life. So you would hope that'd be a fundamental thing that they would understand given the frequency with which it occurs. Right. So trying to abstain from any type of focus on weight is one. And abstain from any type of taking out a macronutrient, right, is another. And these lead, and the third piece that I really like to highlight within that warning signs is when individuals talk about good or bad food in general. You also hear this with earning and deserving food. Any of those metrics show a lack of understanding that could be borderline unhealthy and lead to, as Sergeant Arratia brought up earlier, eating disorders. Even the most well-intentioned individuals can develop just negative behavioral practices and relationships with food.
Like bread.
like bread. On this island, I couldn't tell you how many times someone comes up to me once they either learn a little bit more about my background or where I am, and the first thing that they want to do is offer things that they feel they are doing well, right? To seek some type of confirmation. And I love it. And I'm never going to take those opportunities and try and use it as a teaching tool, because that's not the time. The time and place is not to take away their choice to share positive information with me, because I want to affirm that. But one of the first things I always hear is, you'd be so proud of me. I've cut out bread. I've cut out rice. I've cut out carbs, right? And I've dropped, we said earlier, 20 pounds in the last 2 or 3
You were
weeks.
about to collapse in 20 seconds.
Exactly. And all to me is just red flag, red flag, red flag, red flag. But in the time is fantastic. You're doing an incredible job. I'm glad that you're trying to change yourself and look after yourself. If you want, let's set aside time. We can have a conversation. And the follow-up, obviously, in our environment is quite difficult, right? But never want to take away that time, at least in those type of situations, because it's different if it was my soldier that I get to work with every single day, which is why we want the squad leaders to be more knowledgeable about this, and platoon sergeants to be more knowledgeable about this, the company commanders and first sergeants to be more knowledgeable about this, so they can hear these red flags and address them, right? But
So can I ask?
go ahead.
To even everybody in the. I just wrote down something. I said, I just believe this. I think leaders have to care about fitness and nutrition. It has to
Yes.
matter to them, right? And in everybody's opinion, do you think when we start talking about healthy eating habits and whatever you want to, I think people correlate it with training and like working out, and not like this is good for my life, right? And I just want to get everybody's opinion on, do you think that's a leadership challenge too? Like, do you think this is my life, and if I'm gonna do this, I don't have to, you know what, Jones? It's good. I'm glad you up at such and such in the morning training, but that's not what I do.
Yeah.
But for me, it's not about the training, it's about
Help.
health.
Exactly. What do you think, Sarah?
Yes, a personal story. I did lose 14 pounds and I lost 7% body fat
Very nice.
in a year period. And yes, education.
That's beautiful, yeah.
Yes, but I had 3 different personal trainers and I spent almost $10,000 and I'm.
Oh my.
So yes, I don't mind. At the time, I even wrote an article on the Minister about. But the intent is that then we go back to our old habits. So I'm finding myself getting back into bad habits, and I know what's right. And like you say, maybe a lack of education or a lack of effort, but I'm to the point that I'm willing to spend the money again to go to the gym, and I have the one here that have CrossFit for $30 for a whole month. And I'm willing to go to the one across the street from my house, that's $160 for the whole month, but paying the difference, I paid the $30, and you think I did that class this month? No. But this one, if I pay that money, I'm gonna go. So it could be on so many factors, but it could be bad, laziness, going and not being, constant with change. And I do understand that it is a difference in lifestyle, but I think that sometimes when you have somebody either guiding you, pushing you, or you're paying your own money,
Right.
it's gonna hurt, and therefore you're gonna do it. So I'm not gonna be spending $10,000 and then like, oh, let me go to Burger King, something like that. No, it's not gonna happen. Meal prepping, I was, eating healthy, all the instructions and all the food, nothing was restricted. It was all about portions.
Yes.
I'm not with it. Well, you.
What was the question? So, no problem. If I can summarize, please let me know if I don't summarize it correctly, sir. So the initial part, and there was a lot of really good variables I brought up in here I want to address too. But he asked, he's asking our opinion on essentially from a leader's perspective, are we looking at it like, are we dissociating the importance of the information? So that person's training, therefore they're looking at nutrition as fuel, but that's not me, right? And I may never even look at nutrition that way because I'm just looking at it as I need to eat. It's time for me to eat, right? So, Major Jones, I love the fact that you're waking up at 4 a.m. I love the fact that you're going to the gym. I love the fact that you are eating properly. And that's where the information stops. There seems to be some type of wall between that leader saying that and that leader understanding that they are also human and need to eat well and need to move well, but that's not them. Did I address your
That's
thing
how you
properly?
feel about it. Yes, exactly. I think exactly what he said is, so as leaders, do we look at it as this person's working out there in the gym, they're eating they have portion control. I don't like eating right thing, but they have portion control, they're doing all that. But then, see, I feel like especially some of us as long as they say, we say, well, that's not what I do.
Mm.
I'm not gonna go here. I'm not gonna so much worry about that. But then what happens when we have younger soldiers, I feel like, or sometimes that are now really into this functional fitness, whatever the case may be. Powerlifters, we have more powerlifters and bodybuilders and functional fitness people, I think, in the military now than we've ever had, right? You've trained some.
Oh, yeah.
Right, that are awesome, right?
Mm-hmm.
I think it's not, I'm not gonna say it's not important, but I think it's just something here's your job, this is your job. This part is just fun, I think we kind of disassociate. It's a little, that's not my lifestyle, but it's actually good for you to get out and walk. It's good for you to do portion control. It's not about the training. I think we associate that. I think we associate that with training. Any of this, it's like this is about passing the ACFT. I think that's the first thing that goes off, which is not the case, right? I mean, I'm just getting everybody's opinion.
So if I can put it in a question format, is it, give me a moment, let me see. Is the leadership issue the association of, say, positive nutrition with those that are actually training? And if that's not happening, then they don't do it at all. Is that kind of piece? Is that been your perspective or your understanding of it, Master?
Well, as far as, if we want to go back to opinion real quick, I think that whatever works for people works for people.
Right.
And as leaders and, lower level and senior leadership, our job isn't to discourage people from doing what works for them. Right?
Right.
Now, when whatever they're doing does not work for them or the Army, since we are a regulation-based organization, right? Then you have to change something. Not to say that all people that are doing what they love to do and successful doesn't mean they don't need this as well. But I think it's my belief that you do what works for you until it doesn't work, right? And then you ask for help or you get some intervention or something like that. I think that as, overall, we don't really control the minds of each other.
That's very true.
Recommend, we can guide, we can suggest, but ultimately people are going to do what they're going to do. And as leaders, we need to intervene when they start doing stupid stuff.
Yes.
Kind of hurt them or make.
And the reason why I asked that question, and then I'm gonna shut up because I gotta get this one out. I was sitting in the YTV. I think I told you. Sitting in the YTV and at USAR, and the PT thing comes up. And people, because all that stuff goes up there, if y'all didn't know. PT, pass, fail, height, weight, all that. And all the units all the commands were getting up and briefing. Sergeant Major's briefing, right? Reached that part of the court, right? And the highest ranking person at the time in the Armed Reserve, our 3-star, this is the exact word that he said. General Lucky said this. He said, PT, this height weight thing, it makes no sense. It's easy. His exact word. He says, it's easy. Eat, if you want to lose weight, you want to get better, eat less, run more. Period. Move on. I don't want to hear about it anymore. This is our 3. I'm serious. And some of us are like, that's what he said. He said, eat less, run more.
It's not a good message.
No, it's
Period.
not.
So this is, and anybody can, I was sitting right there, and this is, so you're talking about 3-star and all the commands and S3s or XOs, whatever, civilian leadership in this room, that's the message. Boom. And he said, I don't want to hear about it anymore. Next slide. I don't want to hear about this anymore on anybody else's slide. Eat less, run more. That's it.
So
Drink water, something like that.
to that exact point, and what Master
Okay,
brought
now
up,
I'm done. Okay. Now I'm talking.
and I'll bring up
Yeah,
certain
everybody
ideas
come on now. Yeah.
aspect as well. So a lot of positive intentions tend to get hit with the reductionist hammer. And then things start falling off. And then we have this ebb and flow of issues, right? So in that case, General Lucky could have very well been
Sure.
well-intentioned. Yeah, and said, to truncate all of this, eat less calories and be more active. Is that true? Yes, in the general sense of it, but does it,
That's not necessarily true.
it's not necessarily true, and it opens up so many issues.
I can eat 1,100 calories a day, but I go to Burger King and get my meal for $1,100.
But
I
see,
mean, 1,100 calories and not eat nothing else for the rest of the day.
but even just portion or type of food is a guy that spends half his time a day in the gym as opposed to a guy that does not. Calorie
effect of
intake
it.
is hugely different.
Yes,
Yeah.
exactly. So
Portion control only really, in my opinion, portion control only really is.
It's a piece of the
relevant
puzzle.
to the Type of the food, what the type of the food, like. What I tell a soldier, eat all the vegetables you want, no problems. Okay, or eat all the donuts you want, no problem. No, it's the type of food you're gonna eat within reason, right?
Right.
Portion control is relevant.
is the amount of energy within that food. If I give you a handful of nuts, it's going to be approximately 180 to 260 calories. If I give you a handful of broccoli, you may have 7. Right? So it's big in that. But again, I think it's that forest through the trees aspect. If we look at it as just always less calories and always moving more, we're missing the issue. And I want to bring up what Matt brought up earlier. We're not trying to say as leaders, you should be interjecting yourself into your soldier's life, slapping a donut and monsters out of their hand and telling them they only need to be eating fruits and vegetables. That's not the point. The point is to try and make the soldier more autonomous, to change the understanding. And so the ineffective aspect from the Army's perspective is, when is that important? So when we look at what we have in place for policies, processes, and procedures, currently it's the only populations we tend to try and affect are those that have failed the minimum, but we leave so much more to be desired.
You only put overtake people on the ABC program.
Exactly.
It's only, they're only entitled to it. Nobody
Yes.
else is any part of it.
No one else. We never have any nutrition conversations with someone that may be still overweight, but is passing the composition piece, whether that's due to their genetics and where they store adipose tissue, or maybe ineffective tape process, or maybe their unit isn't even regularly taping it, right?
That's underweight, look but they have high blood
Exactly. Or those that are skinny fat, right? Those that are underweight to an extent, but still their body composition, even though their weight on a scale may be low, their body composition is still ineffective. Same thing with PT. We can all agree, and we've had these conversations before, that the Army combat fitness test minimums are ridiculous, and they're not indicative of positive health behaviors. So if the only people you're looking at are those that are scoring less than 60, you should still look at those. Not saying don't, I'm not saying to ignore those, but you leave so much more to be desired. Army physical fitness is not about the ACFT. The ACFT is just, are your general physical practices that your unit's doing for your occupation meeting performance metrics that are good enough biannually or annually, depending on your compo, to meet these bare minimums. Other than that, keep your training up. You don't want to fall below certain thresholds. For body composition, we've talked about this before, even if you look at the tape test, you could be a 17-year-old female, and the body fat percentage the Army allows you to have is 30%, which is obese, right? So we're not trying to say people need a six-pack. We're not trying to say that you need to be lean and have definition like a bodybuilder. That is not our job as soldiers and as tactical athletes, is to look lean. That's not our job. But because soldiers typically look in the mirror and at the scale, and they associate those with positive progress with regards to their nutrition and physical behaviors, rather than having optimal performance, since performance is only brought up with the ACFT, there's so many disconnects. No wonder they don't have the information to be able to do that. A leader doesn't go and create, hey, we are military police. We need to be able to, whether we're doing detaining operations, defending a base, coordinating an area, what physical skills do we need to be able to do, and how can we assess our soldiers' capabilities in those physical skills and get them better at that? And then use the ACFT just as a general measure of where they are as a soldier, right? So setting our own unit-based occupational physical performance metrics and working toward that. And then nutrition-based, you're going to eat. I don't need to tell you what to eat, but I can have regular conversations about positive behavioral practices so that you don't think your number going up on a scale is a bad thing. So you don't look in the mirror and think, why don't I have the lines on my stomach? I'm 20 years old. I should be able to have lines in my stomach. Or people that get older and like, I am 50, I will never have lines in my stomach again. When none of those are necessarily true. And again, is it even important? Is the metric that you are measuring yourself again even important? To the point where Sergeant Laratia talked about spending $10,000 to lose weight and to perform in the gym. When the Army has programs for it, we have people for it, and all of these other things. And she's saying she's even willing to spend 4 times the amount just to give herself her own internal, her own intrinsic motivation of guilt to train.
Guilt.
And that's out of her. That's out of her. But it's true, right? So these are all pieces. We as leaders, instead of saying, hey, I need you to make sure you can go down further on your push-up, that's fine. There's time and place for that. How do we look at the motivation of our soldier, understand why they're doing what they're doing, and affect the why to make them more autonomous? Why do you think you need to lose weight? All because Army body composition. Army's not asking about weight. Do you pass the tape test? I passed the tape test. Okay, so then what do you actually want? Are you fearful of an extrinsic viewpoint of your body composition administratively? Are you fearful of what, and potentially even feeling shameful of what it is when other people look at you? And is that what you want to change? And that's fine. It's not necessarily a negative thing. We do want to kind of address the psychological component of why that's the case. But at the same time, we can help you address your body composition. We need to know what you're doing and why you think what you're doing isn't working to be able to address it. But we can address that. I want to go and bench press. Okay, why do you want to bench press? Do you want to bench press just because you want to lift more, or you want to actually be a power lifter? Like, what's coming in here? How do we address the why to be able to help our soldiers? And again, that's the big piece that I think we need to understand: conversations, right? Anyone want to add to that piece so far? Good. Excellent. So Pinya, you've been in the room for a while. Do you have anything you want to add? It's all right. That's why we do it virtually, so people can take the information passively if they want as well, and for the recording. So to kind of bring this all back together, I think one of the biggest things is we need to do as leaders, one, we need to educate ourselves enough so we can understand what those red flags are. But two, we need to start to put in processes potentially in place outside of these random metrics of just failure of programs that we can be able to address these things. How do we take a soldier and teach them that eating, quote unquote, healthier isn't more expensive? How do we teach them when they're nurses and they work in correctional facilities, for especially for Compo 3, right? Because we're different a lot. Obviously, we're constrained versus Compo 1, where we have a myriad of jobs that our soldiers do on the TPU side, or on, excuse me, on the civilian side, that they need to be able to address, where maybe they have a swing shift. Do they have access to refrigerators where they work and microwaves? Or is it like every single military post due to contracting where the only thing that you can find on there is fast food, right? So that's one piece. We need to get the understanding to the leaders so they can see and comprehend when those red flags are, and then they can set aside time to have conversations, hopefully at a team level, not at a squad level, and then tertiary at most, in my opinion, platoon level, rather than these company levels. One-on-one is good as well, but one-on-one people can get very defensive about their habits. And we're not trying to say you're wrong. We're trying to say maybe there's something that you may be missing or misunderstanding. So let's talk about this in a group setting. The second piece in this, I really want to emphasize this, is the negative behavioral habits that can lead to eating disorders. This is something that Hatia brought up. And I've even struggled with this myself, right? Because I've done aesthetic competitions and things of that nature, where even with my understanding of nutrition, as long as I've done this, as many athletes I've talked to, it is still difficult for me when I put together training sessions, or I know what I've looked like before, and I look in the mirror, or when I look at the scale, and it takes active work on my end to tell myself, well, it's ridiculous. You've been, if you're working 14 hours a day, 2 weeks straight, you're not training like you want, doesn't feel like you're training what you want, but you're still able to maintain where you are, lack of sleep and everything, you're still doing a really good job. And progress can be slow. You can have bad day, bad week, bad month after month, and it doesn't mean you're wrong, because you're still going to move and eat for the rest of your life. All right, so as long as you don't have a competition coming up, it doesn't matter. Focus on the overall habits. Stop looking at short-term changes.
People look at what they have, like social media, magazine. It used to be magazine. Not date myself. But like social media and a lot of this stuff now has gotten people so. It used to be where this is not good thing. People would body shame other people, right?
Yes.
Now, body shame them. Like personally, that internal thing. I look in the mirror, I don't see what I like. So okay. I got this picture up of whoever, right? I got this picture up, and I want to look like that. And what they don't realize is looking like that, it's some things that they're doing, and some people that are doing some. There's some things that they're doing that's totally different from what you probably, or that you may have access to, or willing to do.
Exactly.
Or time, right?
Do you need to look
Time,
like that?
right? Like I can tell you when, and this is, I remember when the movie 300 came out, and people went crazy when that article hit Muscle Fitness and all the magazines. Went crazy. I don't know if I forget where I was. All you saw was everyone doing the 300 workout.
Mm-hmm. To try and look like that. Six-pack abs in 6 minutes and all of these other short-term quick fixes to look like it.
And that's what they call it, 300.
300 reps.
50 reps per jumps and deadlifts and this, and you saw the gym, people were doing what you doing, 300. People had it written down. 300 workout. But they just saw the workout piece. And what they saw was the guys and the workout.
No
But
nutrition.
But they didn't.
Right.
Exactly. They forgot
And
all
sleep
the,
and
they
everything
forgot
else.
all the other part that they were sleeping 9-10 hours a day.
Yes.
And they were working, I mean, and they all stayed together in one place. They all had people like monitoring everything. And they all came in with something, right? They all came in. But that was like, all you saw like was people, I'm doing a 300 workout. You saw people like, oh man, I got to like rep 75, I'm done. So now you're done. You're done.
And it's incredible how many people think that's what they need to do. That they need to be sweating, tired, and sore. Otherwise, they didn't train enough and they're not going to lose
Right.
weight and they're not going to change all these other things. So even the correlation that we mentioned earlier that, and you actually brought this up initially, sir, with the fact that I need to eat well because I'm exercising. I need to exercise because I eat well. But when one thing doesn't happen, they may not do the other, right? Where nutrition, that's where the rest of your health is based off of, that and recovery. Exercise just teaches your body how it can use the nutrients you're giving it in order to make adaptations. But it's not going to make it, you just exercising isn't going to make you look good. You just exercising isn't going to make you stronger. There's it's not a monolith. There's so many specifics that go into it. And you're absolutely right. It's the piece of that, and some of that leads to the problems that Sergeant Laratia said that she had, leads to some of the eating disorders, some of the things I mentioned earlier. And it's the whole idea of focus and prioritization, right? So an individual sees that body, as you mentioned, that they may think they want, and they see how someone else got it, and they think, well, that's obviously what I need to do to get there. And they hear the same type of anecdotal advice in the gym and from people within the office. You go to the person that looks good and you're like, how do I look like you? That's not the point. We may have completely different training goals. I may want to pick something heavy up and you may want to run really far.
Right.
We don't even need to look the same. Right? Why would you want to do that? Right? As much as a thank you, right? I did work hard. Thank you for acknowledging that and noticing, right? But outside of that, why? Right. So we need to approach the whys as well as understanding. And for the individual on the psychological perspective, for positive psychology, as the leader, one of them, and this applies more so than just nutrition and physical fitness, it can go to a lot of different achievements. What we don't tend to develop, especially in the military, of habits is, or let me say it like this, what we tend to develop as far as habits is a focus on the levels that we can achieve. Right? Such as, can you get a 300 in the APFT or 600 in the ACFT? Can you go through a best warrior competition in the year? We focus on these benchmarks, on these levels that we can achieve, rather than teaching our soldiers as human beings that they're able to achieve levels. How often were you able to stick to the thing that you're doing, even if you saw little progress? It is such a huge win, just that you were able to stick to the program that you were on for 4-6 weeks. You were able to show discipline. How often were you able to modify this part of your habit and feel good about yourself, right? That's what we need to address. Not, did you lose 30 pounds and you lost 12, you're not there yet, you failed, right? Not, you wanted to bench 225, but you're at 185 and you just haven't hit there. It's a yet problem. You can achieve levels. How can I, as a leader, serve you to help you get to those levels? Right, and that's the piece.
Yeah,
Good.
tactical pause to your little class, because the PC wants all the AGR.
All right, we'll bring this to a close
That's why I
then.
say tactical pause. That was
Thank
a good
you
fix.
for everyone that joined virtually. I will be closing out this recording and I will be posting it online. We'll continue next week or the next clinic on Thursday. Thank you very much.